What's up, Spice Warriors? It's DuneBro, and today this is going to be our Fremen beginner's guide, getting you started with the Fremen, the native people of Arrakis here in Dune Spice Wars. I just got done playing through a free-for-all game, multiplayer, and I was victorious, so we're half good at this faction, and we're going to be going through all of the things that make them unique and help you get started with them. If you want to learn more about other factions in the game, I have a Harkonnen and Ekaz guide as well as Let's Play for each of those. So check those out, subscribe to the channel, leave me a comment if you watch this, and hope you enjoy. Let's dig into it. So we are playing as the Fremen here, and let's take a look at the faction bonuses, which you can see up here at the top. I'm going to pause. So faction bonuses, spice fields in neutral and controlled regions can be harvested by harvesting teams, a mobile unit. Now this is different from every other faction, and if this is your first time playing as the Fremen, this might be a bit confusing for you at first. You're going to be looking for, if you're clicking on villages, you're going to be wondering, where's the spice refinery? I'm looking for the spice refinery, and you are not going to be able to find it. As you can see here, it doesn't exist. So how it works for the Fremen is you train these harvesting teams at your siege, so your main base. So as you control a spice region, it unlocks this harvesting team. And you can see here, actually I've got this one working, but they are mobile units you have to move around and actually manually deploy. So this is how you gather spice with the Fremen, and the sandworm Shaialud will not try to eat them. So that's an advantage. You don't have to worry about assigning a probe to them either. They'll just sit there and gather their spice. Now, as the bonus mentions, you can also gather from neutral regions. So the case where this is gonna really come to play is, like, say I owned 2 spice regions, and then maybe I lost it. So I actually owned this spice region earlier, and I trained up a spice collector, but then I lost it. And so what you can do is actually, I could walk across the map into a neutral territory, say this was neutral, and I could actually gather from that spice region there with my harvesting team. So it is, it's just a very different way to gather spice with the Fremen, so you want to be aware of that. You can also form alliances with sieges outside of your territory. Now, this is a really big part of playing this faction. They have a lot of developments and techs around these alliances with sieges, and I'm going to show you this in a little bit more detail here. Okay, so with other factions, you can only get ally with the sieges that are inside your territory, like this one is, and these are the natives that are on the planet that they come and they raid you, but you can trade resources to them over time. You eventually become allied with them, and then of course it does have an upkeep of water and authority, and they give you different bonuses, right, depending on what they are. But with the Fremen, they can, you can trade with the siege that's across the map. So like this one right here, I can trade with them. I'm already 100% allied with them, and that's a unique thing. Now, you can actually, as the Fremen, build developments in these. So if I ally with them and get that, turn that on, form this alliance, I can now build up industries inside of this siege, and that's a super cool thing. So check this out. There's economic, military, and statecraft. I'll go through each of these for you. So this one will increase the resources you're trading. So I'm trading for plascrete, it would increase that. Probably don't want that. I might use that in like a spice region, perhaps. Additional Solari, additional spice to ally harvesting teams in the region and its neighbors, and then plascrete. For your military, these are the ones I'm more likely to get, quite honestly. 20% thumper production and +2 max thumpers, and I'll talk about what this is in a second, but this is how you ride the sandworm around the map. So you get additional of those, and you want to be using those a lot, really, with your military to kind of play kind of guerrilla warfare, hit and run in places where your enemy can't get to easily. This will make the siege raid more frequently, so maybe there's an enemy nearby. This one, every siege and every allied or neutral village gains additional power for militia and max health, and then additional military unit power. So this is a really good one. It just makes all your units have 10% more power. So that's a huge one to have. Look at the statecraft. You can get additional intel per neutral villages in the region and its neighbors, additional knowledge, additional water, or additional knowledge per positive water. So those are all the industries you can build up in your siege. So all that to be said, the big difference being that you can actually form alliances with sieges across the map, and there are a lot of techs around these alliances, and we'll talk about that when we go through all the developments. We'll get to that in a moment, okay? Okay, so we talked about that. Can use thumpers to perform worm riding. So if you've seen the movie, read the book, you should know the Fremen, they're capable of harnessing Shai-Hulud, the worm, and can use it as a transport, kind of like a sand subway. But there's kind of some intricacies to using this. So let me test it out and show you how this works. So I've got some troops here, and say I want to get them from here, maybe like down to where my enemy's base was. Other factions can use airfields, but actually these thumpers allow you to get even additional range, because typically the airfields are limited to the radius around your village you control. So I'm going to bring my army out onto the sand. You cannot use thumpers on rocks. So see, if I try to use it in this region, you know, the sandworm can't move through rocks. So it can be limiting. You might have to move your military into a position where you can actually activate it, and you cannot be in battle. So just be aware of that. So I can place it there, and then it's going to show me my range of where I can ride it to. And I've actually got quite a substantial range right now. And you can see it's limited to where it's connected. So you see there's rocks there. I can't ride to there, and I can go pretty far with this thumper. So watch, I'm going to, I will actually select it to go here, and you'll see them ride. Okay, so there they'll jump inside of the worm. Here it goes. So now they're riding the worm subway across the map. Now the enemy can see this. There's our upgrades. Like right now I've got an upgrade that makes it go really fast. So that's faster than it usually goes. But there we go. Now you can see it used a thumper, so it'll take some time to get that back. And there's of course ways you can make that faster. But that's essentially how the thumper works. And then, you know, maybe I want to piggyback and I want to thump to the next location. I'm going to go out there. They'll jump in. Again, I've got a super speedy one. And he'll go flying across the map. And so it's a great way. Like I was actually able to this game go from here outside my base all the way to the smuggler base, and I was also able to thump from here all the way to the Atreides base, like right up to it. So that's how you get away. It's your sand subway. My troops are going to die out there in the sand now because I've left them here. Let's pick them back up. We can't let them deal with that. They're just doing what they're told. Okay, we're gonna bring the boys back home. We'll jump inside of that. Now I actually have an upgrade right now. We'll talk about more about this, but worm riding is 100% faster. That's this bottom military one. And worm riding is only visible from close range, so they don't know it's coming. And then on exiting worm riding, units gain 50% attack power on the next attack. So that's a huge upgrade to have in the late game for, you know, launching into the enemy base and then getting a quick attack. They're gonna die. Okay, anyways, that's worm riding and how it works. You start off with three, you have to actually unlock the regeneration of them. You can see thumpers are generated passively and attract larger sandworms that can go further. So starting out, you can't go that far, and they don't automatically replenish until you hit 5k hegemony. Okay, so that's thumpers. Super fun to use, honestly. Maybe one of the more fun things of this entire game, I would say, especially getting sneak attacks on enemy armies. Villages have -1 maximum building slot. So if you've played some of the other factions, perhaps Harkonnen or Ikaz, you might be used to, you know, do what, quote, building tall, like really building up your villages. You're not going to have as many building slots as with other factions. You can see here I only have 4, which is very different. So the Fremen specialize more on making these alliances with sieges and expanding wide, right? So you can use that thumper, like sure you can use it to attack the enemy, but you can also use it, you know, to come out here and then maybe I want to take territory across the map. Like that would be really hard for, you know, maybe a smuggler to try to take that from across the map. I could jump inside the thumper, go over here and maybe take land from across the map. So you want to expand early and often and have plenty of authority, of course. Looking at the 5k hegemony, it will give you some other bonuses. So in addition to the passively regenerating thumpers and the larger sandworms that can go further, extension of your subway, surrounding a deep desert grants control over it. So if I were to have this desert completely surrounded by territory, so if I owned this, which I did earlier in the game, I lost it, but if I own this territory, this would then grant me control over this, and this would then be my territory. So that's a big bonus for them is you want to try to, find some deep desert, and maybe it's this one, and you want to surround this. And then actually, when you control that, it will you'll get additional instances around. So I've got this Heir of Arrakis actually, which is this tech right here. So control deep deserts grant neighboring villages +2 instances of the village's trait. So that's their bonuses from the village, and then their militia power goes up, and then authority. So it's a good bonus for them. They're a desert faction, right? It's good for you to be able to try to control something like this. So think about that as you're expanding early on. So surrounding deep desert gives you control at 5k hegemony. Looking at 10k hegemony, grants knowledge of enemy alliances with the siege. So maybe they're allied with this siege, and maybe you want to mess that up. Maybe you want to decide to attack the siege instead and make sure they'll lose that alliance altogether. That could be something to do. Or you can also use siege as a place, like if this siege was in enemy territory, I could go stand on top of it to resupply. So that's something to be aware of. But I don't usually think a whole lot about this one, but it's something else. And then allied sieges have a settlement capable of hosting a specialized industry. So that's what I was showing you at the beginning. These settlements, you can see I've got Thumper production here, but this is available once you hit to 10k hegemony. So it's gonna be a late game. So start making those siege alliances early and often. Okay, so that's going to be all of your unique bonuses for the Fremen. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk about some of the other things. So as far as their taxes go, they're paying the Spacing Guild bribe. So the Fremen, they're not on any highfalutin council. You don't get a bunch of Landsrad stand. You don't have any Landsrad standing, you'll notice. So they're paying off the Spacing Guild bribe, but if you look at the council here, you'll notice you do not get any votes out of the gate. Any voting you want to do, you have to pay for with influence, which kind of stinks. So for that reason, you have very limited control over what's going to happen on the council. Now, you can influence, of course. You can spend your influence, and maybe you want to tech up to get more influence from your villages. You certainly can do that. Remember, you have less building slots on your villages. But I typically will save my influence for resolutions I really care about to spend. Now, something really fun to use is this Incite Rebellion, and I have this available because I used Shawnee Kynes, and it can use Incite Rebellions on Landsrad resolutions, causing rebellions in enemy villages if it passes. And then you gain +1 intel production per neutral neighboring region with her as well. So, for instance, if I, for maybe, let's say this one, if I've Incite Rebellion, I spend my 100 intel, okay? So if this resolution passes, all other factions will suffer rebellion. So then when the voting comes around, I might say, okay, I'm going to cash in my influence. I'm going to make sure this thing passes. And then if that passes, anyone I'm not allied with at the time will get a little rebellion in one of their towns. So it's super annoying to deal with. They've got rebels they'll have to go and kill, and it can be disruptive. So I really enjoy it. And if your enemies may be teetering on being strapped for resources, or perhaps you're in a long drawn out war, that could be the difference if you disable a spice region or something like that. So not as much voting influence, but you can spend your influence points. So just be aware of that when it comes to the Fremen, but you don't have Landsrad standing, so you don't have to worry about pleasing the Landsrad. For that reason, by the way, you'll notice this used to confuse me. There'll be a lot of resolutions that say things like all factions lose Landsrad standing, and I always was like, well, why would you vote for that? It hurts everybody. Well, for the Fremen, right, they don't have Landsrad standing. So you want to vote for that if you want to hurt the other factions that do. So something to consider as far as that's concerned. Okay, so let's look at these developments specifically in your villages rather, and see what's available. Now, realize I'm late game. I've got a lot of things teched up, so you're going to see some, maybe some buildings that aren't available right out of the gate for you. Okay, so we talked about having this counselor. We also have Mother Ramallo. These are the two I like to go with in most games. With Mother Ramallo allows the construction of the Shai-Hulud Temple. Shai-Hulud is the sandworm. In a village. Harvesting teams also gain a stealth and can receive +1 more crew. So that buffed my harvesting team. That's why mine were stealth if you looked at them earlier. So let's look at the Shai-Hulud Temple that you can get. So Shai-Hulud Temple, it's a major building that's only available because of this counselor. Can build once per faction, so I can only have one of them. plus 20% resource production in ally villages in the region and its neighbors. So it's a big buff. Now, of course, it does cost 1,000 Solari up front, and it does cost 500 Plascrete. But once you build it, I think I built mine here. Yeah, it doesn't have any upkeep, which is nice, because for other factions, you might get some of these late game, some of these techs and stuff, and they have a lot of upkeep. You can see in the top right. So no upkeep for this. You can build one, so use it wisely. So for me, I built mine here because it's right in the middle of my base. It's buffing this spice region. It's buffing this, buffing this, buffing this, buffing this. So that's where I decided to build it. But you can choose where you want it. You just want to make sure it's going to touch several tiles, so you're maximally using that buff. By the way, you can actually see some of the ×2 traits going on. Some of these stacking I've done. Like you can look at, make sure you're inspecting the traits on villages and optimally building them up, or deciding which regions you want to build some of your developments in. Okay, so that's a special building, right? As far as other ones, wind traps are actually available right out of the gate. So for other factions, you have to tech into getting this. You can get a wind trap right away. So it costs 6 Solari to upkeep, but it's going to give you +2 water per level of wind strength. So build them in high wind areas. I typically really don't build the dew collectors with them, but you can if there's like a really crappy wind region, or maybe you're just running out of water. But I really don't build dew collectors. They are less upkeep, so just be aware of that. Okay, how they deal with the energy. So you see, these regions are typically where you get your fuel cells for other factions. Notice there's no fuel cells for the Fremen. For the Fremen, it allows for the construction of ceremonial caves. Now, what is a ceremonial cave? So I've got one built here, actually. So a ceremonial cave, it does have 7 upkeep of Solari and a water requirement. It will give your military plus 5% power. So maybe at the very, very early part of the game, you don't want this because it's going to have upkeep. And if you're not fighting, maybe you don't want that power. But sooner enough, you're going to be in some engagements and you're going to want all the power you can get with the Fremen. So you build that. It also has minus 5% spice production. So there is a cost, right? It definitely is costly, but you can afford it. I've got them in everywhere. So in the late game, I've got one there, I've got one there, I've got one wherever I can get them, just to get that extra edge on the military battlefield. So ceremonial caves, you don't have fuel cells, but you have that. And by the way, if you tech towards this early on, which basically I'll talk about this in a second, but once you get this, it'll give you Solari for the ceremonial caves. So it kind of offsets the cost and gives you knowledge per each one. So that's a cool thing you can kind of do with the ceremonial caves. Other than that, that's going to be pretty much all of the unique techs for Fremen. Everything else should look pretty familiar. As far as things you have available with other factions. Now I think we can take some time and talk about the developments. So if we go into our developments panel, of course, I've got a lot unlocked, and you've got basically your economic, your military, your statecraft, espionage, and then this is kind of like your expansion, some defense, and a few other variety upgrades, district upgrades rather. I don't know what you want to call them. So let's start. We're going to mostly talk about really the unique things about the Fremen, because a lot of these are similar to other factions, okay? So let's start on the top left. I do usually open games by going for this because you get additional Plascrete. You need a lot of Plascrete early on because you're building up your villages, right? So I get this first almost every single time. And then I get this because it's going to make it cheaper to annex. So those are two things that are very good at the very beginning of the game, right? And then this will give you additional authority from agents on Arrakis spots. So you get your first agent, you put them on Arrakis, that'll give you more authority. So these are 3 ones that get really early on really nicely. Like I mentioned, also I like to get this early on just to offset that cost of ceremonial caves. And then I like to go down this way because this will make it so that you get all of your, you can add additional harvesting crew. And by the way, if you didn't already know that, when you click on your crew, I've got mine right here. You see I've got 4 in there. You got to add those over time. So they cost manpower, but make sure you're maxing out this crew. That's going to be all your resource. That's a really huge part of the game. So I like to get that, some of this, and then usually go that way is going to be how I open. And it might depend on what's going on in the game, right? Now, unique text for this one reveals the position of all spice fields and unlocks the spice silo, unlocks the Al-Gaib temple building in the Siege. So that's going to be a unique building here in the Siege, and I will show you that one. So that is right here. So it gives you plus 50% received resources when trading with a siege, and 15% spice production. You'll see a recurring theme, by the way. There's a lot of bonuses for trading with the siege or getting more resources from them or detecting them. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. This one is going to be Sand Brotherhood. So 10% resource production in the region of an allied siege and its neighbor. Oh, look at that. Also unlocks the Bazaar, which is a really cool building. I'll show you that in just 1 second. And then this one, Ceremonial Caves, we talked about. That's unique. Okay, so let's look at the Bazaar. This is going to be one of the best early game developments you get. And honestly, I would grab it like first if you can. Unlock this Bazaar, so that's going to be right here. So you're not going to get it first probably, but like second or something. Save one of these single slots for the Bazaar, because what it does is it counts as an economic, a military, and a statecraft building. So it's kind of like a wild card in Uno, right? So you can see since I put it in the single district, it counts as basically this tier 1 for all of them, right? Because if you finish the 2 of an economic, it would unlock this. If I had 3 military, it unlocks this. You see how that works. And you can stack them. So you see how like this made it so that I got this bonus, right? Reduces the cost of economic developments. And since I did that, that makes your developments go up faster, right? Well, if I have two single slots, because this counts as one of each, look, it's got ×2. So I've actually stacked that, which is really, really cool. And then I've got the 3 because of military, so I've got that stacked as well. So the Bazaar counts as one of each, and that's going to make all of your developments get researched faster. So the Bazaar is going to be really, really important one to get. Or you can use it, you know, maybe you want to stack the ×2 trait, like your 3, maybe you want to use it differently, but I typically throw in that ×1. You can even, as you fill this up later in the game, even move it around. So things to consider, but the Bazaar is a super cool development. Okay, let's look into the military now. So for military, you're going to unlock some different units, and we'll look at those here in a second. But let's look at some of these unique techs. So ground units get additional speed, but during liberation of an enemy village, neighboring allied sieges send a supporting raid. So if you've got a neighboring allied siege, see a recurring theme, they will help you raid while you are liberating. And then this one, which I showed you earlier, worm riding is 100% faster, super cool, makes them super speedy, and they can only detect it from close range, and your units get a power buff when exiting the worm. So extremely good late game tech to have. Now, we talked a little bit about, what was I going to say? Oh, we talked about, let's look at this, at our units here. So we're going to be training all these different units. You've got warriors, skirmishers, infiltrators, mobile turret, Fedaykin, spire, altar, and assassin here at this part of the game. So warrior is going to be melee. This is going to be kind of like your specialty melee unit. It's stealth. It has a big first attack. So you may want to, you know, hit it, like use it for a sneak attack and then retreat can be good for this. I really like to try to play this faction like using 2 control groups, and like maybe I'm worm riding here, distracting them there, and then maybe attacking on another side. So stealth can definitely play into that as well. But that's kind of the infiltrator is going to work. That's going to be your range unit. Skirmisher going to be good for taking care of armor. Of course, if you're attacking their main base, you're going to knock down their armor first with the skirmisher. The Fedaykin is going to be like your tank, your big unit, right? For each enemy military unit in combat with this unit, you get additional power. So they're stronger the more enemies there are. The mobile turret, this will be your anti-air turret, and it's a buff for your troops. So can set up an anti-air turret, and it gives +20 power. So that could be a mobile battery for that thing. Actually, I'll be honest. I'm not sure if that means +20 power when it's set up in the missile battery mode, or if that's a buff for all your troops. I'm not entirely clear on that one. I had to test it. If somebody knows, let me know in the comments. I'd have to test it. Like I said, this is the first time playing them in a while, and they've changed a lot of these units up. As far as air go, this is going to be basically your fighter, your spire, right? And your targets suffer. It debuffs them, -10% power. And then the altar is going to be your like big main battleship, right? Can deploy sail so it moves faster. And then there's some onboard abilities, techs you can do with that thing. So it's super cool. Attacks have 70% chance to destroy armor, by the way. So that's going to be kind of your outfit as far as your military goes. Assassins is kind of a specialty thing you can unlock with some techs. It's just like a one and done type of unit. It's assassin, right? As you would expect. Okay, so let's now look at the We were talking about allying with sieges. I want to show you real quick before I forget. So operation wise, you want to use this probe setup. So this probe setup, it's very cheap, but you want to use this often and kind of methodically probe your regions, because these sieges don't just automatically get detected. You have to find them. So over time, you might detect some of them, but basically it's like, okay, if I see a raid came from across the desert, it's like, okay, there's probably a siege like here or here. So you might want to probe this. So maybe you spend one here and then you spend the next one there. And then of course, as you detect them, you can trade with them and get resources. You can see before you even unlock these late game things, right? You can trade like water for spice. That's a really good trade. But you're going to be like basically spending 50 intel like every time this is available. It's something you got to do a lot with the Fremen to take full advantage of these sieges. So you want to do these scans. You can use them in fog too. It'll detect the whole region, right? But you want to use them a lot. Okay, let's look at the espionage or statecraft developments. So we look at the unique things. Fremen solidarity immediately gains 60 relation with all sieges. You have to already have them detected. It doesn't just detect them all. So that's a nice thing. Of course, you also get agent recruitment speed, as all other factions do as well. So that'll be nice. You already start with a lot of relation once you find them, right? Sand diplomats. Each allied siege grants plus 50 max influence. And then it unlocks the embassy, political agreements. And as we mentioned, you don't have base votes. So this extra influence is going to be really important for playing the Fremen if you want to get involved in Landsred resolutions in the voting screens. And then siege network. Each allied siege grants plus 5% chance to detect an enemy operation, and then plus 1 agent slot in counterintelligence. So those are going to be your unique techs for the Fremen here in the statecraft. And then let's look over here, lastly, at kind of our district studies, or whatever you want to call it, expansion. So we've got the Heir of Arrakis, which I was showing you earlier, really cool. Controlling a deep desert, which is like if you control this, like I talked about this earlier, right? Controlling a deep desert, it will give plus 2 instance of the village's traits for the neighboring. So all of these get buffed. So that's really freaking amazing. And then you also get plus 20% militia power, and then a plus 20% authority production per controlled deep desert. So great upgrade to get once you're able to control one of those. You also have your desert wisdom. Wind traps produce 0.1 knowledge per level of wind strength, and then it unlocks research agreement, and then the Mason Guild building. And I'll show you that building. That is right here. So that's going to be additional Plascrete and Solari. And then last but not least, we've got the Desert Watchers. So it's going to give you additional militia slot, help you defend. It's going to also plus 50 health per neutral neighboring village. So there's a lot of advantages for liberating. Because like maybe I don't have the authority, or I don't want to spend it on this stuff, but if I liberate it, that could be, you know, a buff here, right? For the neutral, as far as the neutral goes. Where was it? It was this one, whichever one we were just looking at. But anyways, those are going to be all of our texts for the Fremen. And let's see if there's anything else I forgot. We talked about the resources, we talked about the military, we talked about the texts. Oh, let's look at their operations. And this will probably be where I leave you here. Okay, so probe setup, you're going to want to use that early, use it often. Defense sabotage. So missile bases and main base suffer 30% less power. So if you're diving their main base, using this can be nice, or if they got a bunch of missile batteries set up, that's going to be nice to use as well. Supply drop, that makes sure if your troops are running low in supply, that yellow bar, right? If that runs down to 0, you start to lose health. So as you're in enemy territory or neutral territory, you'll want that to stay alive. This is going to be the meat and potatoes of your engagements. Fremen sabotage. So military units, enemies get minus 10% power and speed. So you can catch them and you can debuff them. So this is very nice. You want to use this very, very often. You can see that's a unique tech for them. Scavenger, this isn't unique, but converts 5% of the power of any dying units into Solari. Leave order, you get Solari if they don't leave the region. Decoy Thumper, this is a unique one. I don't know why it doesn't show as unique, because nobody else has... oh, I'm sorry, this isn't unique for Thumpers, or for Fremen. For the Decoy Thumper, you can use it to call a sandworm. So actually, I had a case where my enemy was advancing from this direction. I used this Decoy Thumper as I'm standing here, and then like the sandworm aggroed him, and he had to hide on this rock for a while. So that was very useful. You can also use them, by the way, protect neighboring regions from sandworm attacks. So if you're attacking this and you think he might call a Thumper on me, I might deploy one here, and then that will distract the worm over here, and then I can advance and not to worry about it. So that's kind of how you can counter sandworms in a way, is to use the decoy thumper. Okay, this is the unique one, hidden thumpers. So riding sandworms to or from the region does not consume a thumper, and then military units in the region gain stealth. So it's going to be used for stealth, but you can use it most importantly if you run out of these thumpers and you need to get across the map, spend the resources. You can use that there. Of course, you have to have 2 on the Arrakis infiltration slot. You can see as a requirement. EMP bomb is against mechanical units. And then we have administrative burden. This is going to target their main base and make it so they can't construct. You can see it's very expensive, but 80% less. So if you're trying to take them out, halt their production, this is a good one to have. This one is unique for the Fremen, and I love it. Awake the people. Starts a rebellion in the village. So maybe I'm not even at war with someone, or maybe they're across the map, and I just wanna with them, right? I can use awaken the people, and it will start a rebellion. And see, I'll actually see if we can. Nah, it would take too long to research, but it's super fun to use. And it does cost a lot of intel, so if you want to spam it, you're going to want to make sure you got a lot of intel production, of course. And if they have, counterintelligence, they might catch your agent, so just do be aware of that. Defense breaches for taking out main bases, of course. And then you use these infiltration cells if you want to go the assassination route, which you can. It's very expensive. I don't think assassination is very easy to do, but you would have put an agent there once it gets up to level 1. Or I can use this infiltration mission, then I can unlock another slot, then use it again and unlock a 3rd slot, and then you can pay for the assassination. Then it takes forever and a day to actually get. Okay, well, that is going to be probably the conclusion of my Fremen beginner's guide. A little bit lengthy, but I think there's a lot to know. They're a very unique faction, and I think while all the factions are asymmetric in ways, this one plays really different from the other Imperium members of the Dune universe. So have fun with them, and let me know if you have any questions down below or anything that I missed you can correct me on. Kindly leave it down in the comments. And if you did enjoy the comment, this video, consider subscribing to the channel. It helps me out. Check out my other guides or my Let's Play of the Fremen so you can get a feel of how you might want to play them in a game. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.